Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Hecht, CEO and founder of 10K Humans. And today we're celebrating the Insights Career Network with Brian Fowler, Simon Chadwick, Karen Kirsten, and Jamie Gergadis. ICN launched during the pandemic with Stephen Griffith, Brian Fowler, and a small group of leaders recognized the need for a more accessible support system for people navigating career transitions and insights. Since then, ICN has grown quickly and now stepped into its next chapter as a nonprofit. So today we're talking about where it started, how it's evolved, and what ICN 2.0 is shaping up to be. So why don't we introduce ourselves, guys? I'm going to go in the order that my screen is displaying people. So Karen, why don't you start?
Okay, sure. It's actually Karen, by the way. But
Karen, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah. So I guess by the time this reaches everyone, the cat will be out of the bag about who is filling all of the board positions. So I've been with ICN for the last 2 years. I joined initially as VP of Research on Research. That was following a lot of passion around conducting industry research and understanding what's going on in the job market, coming from the UK to the US as well, especially finding that very interesting and navigating that. After we conducted the hiring study, which was a huge success, we started putting out thought pieces, showing up at conferences while also building the community, but really seeing that there was so much power in the community that we could elevate and start to hopefully drive change in the way that we think about hiring and job seeking and what talent we need going forward. Anyway, so we've been obviously putting together the plans for ICN 2.0. Brian and myself have been very involved in all of that. And then along the way, we've brought in Simon and Jamie, and we're very grateful for that. So I'll be stepping into the secretary role when ICN 2.0 officially launches on Monday.
Amazing. And Simon?
Hi, well, I'm delighted to be here. I do not have the background with ICN that either Brian or Karen have, but I did not intend either to take on another role at a nonprofit, having done it a few times in the past. So, but then I started thinking, this is really an incredibly important venture for a number of reasons. First of all, we have a dramatic change going on in our industry, which is involving a lot of people actually getting very uncertain about their futures, and some of them sort of sitting it out at the moment.
Yep.
So how do we actually help them? The other is it's really, I think, an existential pivot point, in as much as I think that the industry is going to actually be very different in 5 years' time, and we need to prepare for it. And I think something like ICN as ICN 2.0, as a not-for-profit, can be at the center of that. So I basically will be the incoming chair of the board on Monday, and we and I think it's going to be very, very interesting, very challenging. But I'm looking forward to building on what actually the team has built, an amazing organization to date. So we're not starting from nowhere. We're starting from a very, very strong position.
Yeah, I was reading some of the statistics about the growth when preparing for this, and it's really something else.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that a little bit more. So, Jamie, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jamie. ICN has always been in my heart for years, kind of thing. I know Brian and I spoke about it years upon years ago, kind of thing. And I love the community that is built with this, because I think with this whole time of Zoom and meets and stuff like that, we miss that community side of it. And this helps with those transitions that people are going through, that, hey, you can come and share and help and move people forward as they go through this transition. Because humans, we all want to help each other, and we want to help each other survive and thrive and stuff like that. So for ICN 2.0, I will be the treasurer. I will be helping with those partnerships and with the strategy and with the financial side of things so that we can prop this up and really support people as they go forth on their journey and their careers.
Great. And Brian.
Yeah, I know. I'm incredibly fortunate to have these folks working with me today. And, you know, we're coming up on the end of our fourth year, I guess. We started, the ICN was founded by one person reaching out, taking a step to make a change. And it wasn't me, it was a person named Stephen Griffiths, who was one of our original founder, who saw things weren't right. And he saw that there was a lot of power in this new world where we were connecting virtually all the time in a response to the pandemic. And there were all these communities that were being built, and people were getting together, like MRX pros were getting together to help people, and the Insights Association chapters were getting together and helping people. I was part of the Northwest chapter. We were doing it there during the pandemic. And so it was, we know how tough it was for everybody. We saw the jobs, we saw people in the insight sector just falling through the cracks left and right, and having no one to talk to. And they're out there, and now they're remote. There's no one to connect with. But the community started, we started seeing the power of community back then as people started connecting, and Stephen really reached out to a bunch of people and said, look, we should try to formalize this into something that's really geared towards just helping job seekers, and not just helping them once and getting them out the door, but helping them continue to build their skill sets and their confidence, because after 6 months of looking for a job, your confidence is shot.
Yeah.
And you need help getting there, right? And that's like before any drastic changes in the economy or in the insights world, right? So I came to this through my own challenges in looking for my next step and finding myself at the end of one career, really, as an executive running a software platform in Insights, one of the original ones that was part of a merger, and things moved on. I was so burned out. And I went and took a break. Wanted to stay home with my kid, to be there, to be a consultant, to work with, take a break from Insights, and realize that, gosh, it's not easy out there when you're looking outside the sector. If you want to grow in new ways, you really are starting from zero.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of respect for what we do out there. The people don't have a familiarity with market research or insights. You have to explain it every time. So it was a very lonely experience.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit, and I realized that, gosh, there's a lot of people who are having worse struggles than I am, trying to find their way. Everything is disappearing. Their whole livelihoods are disappearing. And they're out there and they're alone, and they need help. So when Stephen came around knocking on the doors and saying, hey, look, we need a few folks to take this on as a special purpose, as a special project, I signed up immediately. I knew it was like, we've all been through these kinds of transitions. And look what's happened since. That was 22, when we started doing call outs and meetups in March.
Yeah, and I think that there's, our industry has some core values, one being continuing education, right? Another being this community that you're talking about. And, then there's the additional aspect that most of the people in our field are actually pretty creative, right? We're methodologists.
Mhm.
I think that when you look at the numbers and sometimes you feel the landscape, things feel a little stark and depressing, but you need to kind of flip that script and remember that there's opportunity within that too. And so I think that, even the aspect of connecting people with each other who maybe decide that they want to give it a go on their own, and maybe they have a particular skill set that is complementary to someone else they meet through the community. And then all of a sudden they have a collective. you know, in the age of mergers, acquisitions, automation, there's going to be a premium on you know, the way humans interact with the data and provide strategic consulting and that kind of thing. So, you know, trying to give people different ways of thinking about it too, you know, and ways to make a resume that is maybe 6 months stale not look stale. So anyway, I digress, but there's a lot of different things that I think can come out of it that is not just straight matching people with you know, a job that they might find. There's so many different ways that this can go for people, and a lot of it is about empowering them and making education accessible and all of these different things that might be cost prohibitive otherwise. So anyway, okay.
Well, yeah, because it feels like people are telling you there's a formula to success, and there's not a formula to that. It's really it's you mold your career, and you change it based on the environment. And if you're not molding it, you get stuck in it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think that there's you know, there's also a lot of creating opportunities for yourself, which, you know, sometimes can, you know, maybe that sounds sort of glib to say, but a lot of times if you approach a company or you start approaching your network with things that you can offer them in ways that you see that you could add value to their team, that's potentially a way to a relationship that isn't just sending a resume in through a portal somewhere. So, you know, we've got a lot to get through, but I think that there's so much value in this community, and I'm excited to dig into this conversation and share what's going on with the folks that will watch this. Okay, so looking back at your fast rise, we touched on this a little bit already, but ICN launched a very strange moment in the world and took off when everything felt very upside down. So what do each of you think helped the community grow and stick? So Brian, I'm going to point the initial response of this one to you, since you were there from day one, and then maybe the rest of you can share what you've seen in looking at it from the outside.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, we were started at a really weird time. Actually, when we first started, the challenge was a little bit different. In early 22, I think we were actually helping more companies find people and help more allies. Like it was that way. But within a year and a half, it changed dramatically. You know, we were dealing with the Great Resignation when this started. You know, when we started the organization, we're like, we got to find your purpose, find your reason. Like, don't leave just yet. You know, we were kind of giving that kind of advice. But then a year and a half, the script flipped, and we were talking about RTO, and we're talking about what was a return to office doing to people in their careers. Now they have to make a really hard decision. Am I going to uplift my family, or am I going to just walk away from this job? And at the same time,
right? Like that script flipped quickly. It went from being, I mean, it was nuts. I remember towards the end of the pandemic where it was just like, you know, people were asking for salaries that were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for, you know, and then the change happened really, really fast.
Super quick. And they were eliminating jobs because they were like, we don't need this many researchers. And so this question about were these jobs real and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't just happening in UX. It was big in UX research, but it was in market research. We were having our own challenges as the whole companies and sectors were shutting down completely. And you know, there were older sectors of the population. Jamie and I worked for companies that you know, were in the telephone research space, and those, you know, that was the end of those guys. You know, all of that was continuing to have tons of people out there on the roll. And then on the corporate side, insights departments continue to merge, and roles continue to merge. And UX and MRX roles become under one. They go under a new department, and that started happening. All this started happening, and it's affecting people across the profession at any age, any stage of the career. And then we had AI drop in our lap, and things changed dramatically. And we realized within, you know, very quickly that this technology was going to both be a huge uplift for our people, but also a real risk to our jobs, because it does great work with unstructured text, and there's so many possibilities of doing things with so few people. And I started hearing from people that, hey, our department had 40 people. Now we have 4. I don't think we're going to have any more. that's where they would eliminate jobs, and they're not backfilling jobs. So it doesn't look, over the years, it doesn't look quite as big, but the reduction of jobs is just intense.
And the jobs that used to be considered fairly recession proof, I mean, it's never been, it's always been a model in our industry that the lower skilled labor gets farmed out to, the cheapest possible source. I mean, that's not new, I think, in the world, right? Not even in our industry, but all of a sudden it was the strategic roles that were becoming are in jeopardy now in a way that they weren't before, which has serious consequences for both individuals and then organizations, right? Like you said, insights teams are just shrinking and trying to figure out how do you add value in a way that justifies the price tag and all of these different kinds of things.
Right, and exactly right, and that's kind of brings us to where I think how we built something that was important, how it stuck, is I think we were delivering something that people didn't have. They didn't have a safe place to go talk about these challenges. They didn't, if they go to a conference, they go to an event, they feel like they got to have their guard up. They need to be, hey, right, I'm indestructible, right, and have your game on all the time, but they don't have a place to workshop those ideas and to let their guard down and say, God, man, I don't know anything about this. Could somebody give me a hand here? Or, a lot of times early on, we started hearing stories from people that would come to our meetups. And these are stories and emotions that they can't even share with their families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't look that on that. But you got to have some place to go talk about that. And we don't all have therapists, and we don't all have friends. A lot of us live in local places, remote places where we don't have connections. We don't live in cities where it's easy to get in touch with people.
Yeah.
Our professional networks were failing us in the mental and emotional support areas. And I think that's a big part of what the ICN delivers, is that sense of community, and that community can heal.
Yeah. A place where people can be both vulnerable and solutions oriented.
Right.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, I agree with all that. Yeah, absolutely. So what's made it stick? It's absolutely been, we're here for the people. We're here for the individuals, not necessarily because, a lot of organizations that are out there that exist today, they're professional organizations. So their customers are the companies themselves, right? And the individuals within those companies. And that's absolutely understandable. But then we also need to look at the individual level, those people, just as people, as humans. And I think that's really where ICN excels and fills that gap. But in terms of what's made us grow, well, there's obviously the community aspect. But I also think, especially when we made that decision, it wasn't my decision, but it was a great decision to start the committees at the beginning of last year, putting more structure in place. So ICN 2.0 is just another level up from that. But we're continuing to build the structure, building the talent, the team, continuing to appeal to not just the people, but trying to get those voices elevated to the rest of the industry and the world, really. And so I think that's also been a huge part of what's helped us to grow, is our original research, our thought leadership, building partnerships, across the industry, and just making sure that what we're doing and the problems we're seeing and helping come up with solutions, but spreading that across the industry.
I love it.
Well, I would add jobs too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Jobs has been incredible. And what happened was, we started resharing the MRX jobs and asking people, hey, tag us in jobs that you think should get uplifted in our community, because not everybody can post jobs on LinkedIn. Those LinkedIn job postings don't last only a couple of days sometimes. And then it just got insane how many people, we had an army out there tagging us in jobs and people should know about this job. You can't find it anywhere else. And so they just, at some point in July 23, we had to add staff members. I had 3 of us were dedicated, rotating around the clock each week, each day, posting jobs, posting jobs, because there were just too many of us, too many for us to cover. And so that really accelerated our following online, is because people are looking for hope. They're looking for, they need some kind of glimmer of hope. And I think that's what we do with those posts.
So great. So thinking about the industry evolution since 2020, and there's been a lot of evolution, the insights landscape now looks nothing like it did in 2020. So what changes in hiring, expectations, tech, or workplace culture have hit professionals the hardest? AI obviously being the top answer here. So I'm going to say let's try to pin in that to the degree that we can, even though because we'll talk more about that later, and I think there's a lot of talk about that. So if we can set AI aside for just a second or roll it into some other point, that would be great.
I think one of the things that it really hit me was when I saw, and I shared it with folks here, when I saw a study that ARF had done. They do an annual study just looking at primarily on the corporate side, how well is insights regarded, how impactful is it, and so on. And they also ask, what talents do you need?
Yeah.
What talents are you looking for? And how difficult is it to look for them? And just those 2 slides this year just hit me right in the face, because if you look at what they were saying 2 years ago, people, who in insights, in corporations who were using insights, they were saying, we need storytelling, we need consulting skills, but we also need the basic skills. You said we're all methodologists. We need those as well. Fast forward to today, it's completely changed. Completely changed. Now it's storytelling, consulting, advanced data analytics, and AI.
I wonder if that pendulum will swing back a little bit. And this is one of those things that, as I was going through the conversations that I had recently with people who were hiring and looking for work, it's, so AI, of course, can do a lot, right? But without the skill set and the knowledge and the understanding of why we're instructing it to do what we need it to do, you're sort of missing a big part of how we get the right answers that we get. And so I wonder if, and this was one of those things that I thought a lot about as I was seeing people who were, in the over 40 crowd getting laid off, right? These are industry veterans who have a whole lot of life left in them and value to add, and they want to work, and they're the ones that have the they have that institutional knowledge that is so important and has been the driver of our career, which has been pretty recession proof for so long. So I wonder if within the next couple of years the pendulum will swing back when people realize that, look, you still need to know why to tell the machine to do what it needs to do, and you need to make sure it's doing it right.
I agree. I do agree. And it's also not just the 40-plus-year-olds who are exiting. The recent graduates are not entering.
Oh, right. They're not getting hired, and they're not finding roles that match, their student loan debt.
Exactly. But the second slide in that set of 2 slides was all about how difficult do you find it, or how easy do you find it to get these people with these talents, and all the things that they're saying they need, they're saying incredibly difficult. So people are exiting, and yet they're not bringing bring what they say they need in, and so you're creating a vacuum. And I think you're right. I think the pendulum will swing back in a couple of years, but there may be nothing to swing back to. Right.
And the ICN's role could be really crucial in bridging that gap. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's really where, I think when Karen, you came up with the first, research on research, the first real solid study with your team at ICN, and really reading through that was eye-popping in terms of what people were experiencing, but also what was actually happening in the market.
Well, what was unique about it, because we had run this study before that looked purely at the hiring and recruitment and talent acquisition side, but then when we ran the follow-up, we went big. We had 70 interviews. The first one was, I think, 17, and then we also reached out to job seekers too, so people who had recently found work or who were still looking for work. But that was how we were able to join and actually spot the huge gap between what people are looking for and what's actually out there and what people need and can provide to those jobs. So yes, that gap grew because there was such a huge change, huge shifts in priorities that happened virtually overnight, as you all were just talking about. And that's really, I think, where the biggest pain has been felt, is just that like slap in the face, rug pulled out from under you, regardless of how experienced or specialized you are. Whatever you thought would make you bulletproof in your career, the rules no longer apply. It's all different now.
Yeah. Interesting. So the nonprofit pivot. So this is a really exciting opportunity for you guys. Like this is a great move. So you're stepping into 2026 as a 501c3, which is a hugely meaningful shift. What does nonprofit status unlock that you couldn't quite do before?
Money.
Yeah, I was going to say funding. We have been operating the ICN on a angel hair shoestring budget for the last 4 years. And so, it's limited what we can do, but the growth just keeps going. It keeps getting, the group keeps getting bigger. The demand seems to be growing every day. And it's clear that we just can't continue to operate sustainably without moving into some into an organization away from being a community. And the nonprofit decision was the easiest decision to make, because we knew everything that we're doing here is to help people, to support them, to retrain them. That at our hearts, we're a nonprofit. We're a service-based educational organization that supports people through some of the worst times in their career, and prepares them to kind of get ready for the future, because we keep hearing about these jobs of the future that use AI, but not seeing them yet. But we need to prepare the people who are out there, and treating this as a nonprofit, is a purpose-driven organization that helps us prepare people for the future, is the best way to go. And it unlocks those opportunities for funding.
I think that there's you talked about hope before, and I think that this is another good place to sort of bring that message back in. It can be daunting to figure out how to upskill yourself, and if you think about some of the other models in our industry that have been around for since I started my career 30 years ago, that are for-profit education driven organizations, continuing education, and they're cost prohibitive. They can be a couple $1,000s, they can be a couple, more than that, they can be tens of thousands of dollars. They can, there's a lot of money, and people who are looking for work, or organizations who are wanting to upskill their people, don't necessarily have that kind of money to spend, or, so I think that this is really, to me, this is one of the most exciting things about what you guys are talking about doing, because I think I see that as giving a necessary thing, but also giving people hope and giving back to, a community that has given so much to so many people.
It really is cost prohibitive to do much on your own, whether it's going to conferences or joining organizations or upskilling through virtual training. I mean, there are a lot of free things out there, and a lot of good free things out there, but there's a ton of sources out there that are creating great training content. We want to help unlock some of those and
Yeah.
guide people into a few different options. Hey, this is a great way to go. If this is where you've been and this is what your interest is, here are a few ways you can start strengthening your position there.
Yeah.
I think Camille Nasita actually put up a post on LinkedIn a couple of days ago where she was saying, how do you manage in this sort of environment? And one of the things she said is, well, first of all, don't expect certainty, because certainty no longer exists. And you have to manage yourself through uncertainty. And if you don't manage yourself through, if you don't be your own agent, you don't take agency, you're not going to get to the front of the queue. And so I think one of the things that we can do, particularly in reaching out to all these sources of training, of education, of experience, of connection, and basically being at a sort of spider's web for all of that and bringing it in together to be available to people so that they can be agents for themselves. And I think that's a huge potential that we've got, and that we need to actively fund and get moving on.
Yeah,
and also grow that confidence, because in this whole aspect of ambiguity and stuff like that, we lose that confidence in what our skill sets are and how our skill sets can apply to many different things just by looking outside of our normal queue or our normal environment kind of thing.
sure.
Yeah, the future is sometimes in those adjacent areas, and we are just blinded by it because we think we should always be looking at the same path we've been looking at or have been thinking of, and that's always been the way we should go. There's other ponds of opportunity right there.
Well,
Brian, it's also, I think you've got a really good analogy there, because those ponds, are actually coming to us as well in the industry. The industry is changing. It's no longer just a research industry. That's long gone. It's going to be data analytics. It's going to be a whole series of things that actually bring data together and that we have to synthesize and we have to make sense of and we have to then consult on. And it's all of that. And if we can actually lead people to think like that, as well as experience it, then I think we actually birth a new industry.
Yeah, I
Simon,
think. Go ahead.
I totally agree with the idea that we're really coming more strategists and more consultants that we're going to. And if we manage ourselves in looking at, hey, we're connecting the business with that research and strategizing on how we get there, I think more opportunities may open up to people.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard in the conversations that I've been having over the past few months is how our industry used to be very good at the consulting aspect, and then we kind of forgot about it. So we were not making the necessary recommendations based on the findings that we had in a consultative way, right? So we're presenting the findings, but we're not saying, so therefore you should consider insert, next statement here. And it was funny when someone finally said that to me. I was like, oh my God, you're like, it happens so slowly, the industry changes. In that case, it was changing so slowly and incrementally over the years that you're like, that's right. So if it is upon us to figure out how we add the right value to make, to the case for ourselves, our industry, and the skills that we have. And again, that's on an organizational level, an industry level, and on a personal individual level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you talking about that, Kerry, because back in the day of Arthur Nielsen or people of that nature, they were talking to CEOs of big clients.
Yeah.
And then it became, have your people talk to my people.
Yeah.
And it sort of slid very quietly down the ranks. And it's only over the last 15 or so years that we've been coming back up.
Yeah, well, marketers have had quite the time of it too, right?
Yeah.
If you think about all of the things that have happened over the past, 2 decades with, how brands are seen and relayed on the internet and everything else, like they've lost control over, they don't have as tight a control as they used to as their brand perception, right? And so they've really been in a funny spot trying to figure out their footing too, the marketers.
Mhm.
And, if we're supporting marketers as well as brands, it does stand to reason why our roles have evolved but now need to evolve again.
Yeah, and product too, supporting product.
Right.
So many stakeholders we support, but just adding to what you were saying, it's the fragmentation also, where at one point when research was all under one roof, we had a much more holistic view, and we could confidently make recommendations that were inclusive of so much more data and so much of the business view. And as we've fragmented and become so much more specialized, and we've had our different stakeholders who are also very specialized, we just don't have the full picture anymore. And it's hard to find that. I'll admit, I think it's really hard for a lot of our professionals to find the time and to find and that can be scary too, is connecting with those other professionals to get to those recommendations. But it's all outside of the job description.
Well, one of the things that I think, and Jamie, you sort of touched on this a minute ago, but as people are thinking about their skill set and themselves as in the totality of who they are, I think that it's really important to remind people as they're laser focused on this career trajectory that they have or think they should have, that they do take a step back and remember that they are a person who has other interests, a person who has other skill sets, a person who provides value to their families, their communities, their friend circle, and to remember to incorporate their whole person into how they're moving forward with what comes next in their career, right? That we are not singularly dimensional humans, right? We are multidimensional, and pulling all of that in together and remembering that, perhaps the insights industry is shifting and that doesn't seem applicable to what your skill set was 3 years ago is not the most relevant thing you can feel or say about yourself. It's all of the things that you do for and with all of the people in your lives and all of the different areas. So I think, I wanted to squeeze that in there because I think it's really important for people to remember that.
Yeah, and I think it really gets into maybe we're moving into the evolution of personal branding more, and who are we as a person and how we can further build ourselves into those positions that are valuable.
Yeah. It's our purpose. It's very purpose driven because everything's hard. If everything's hard, then we have to do what motivates us and what fills us up.
Yeah, that's true. And where you find joy.
Yes.
Yeah, and now there's one thing I want to bring it back a little bit to, because Jamie and I both worked with smaller, mid-sized companies, and we started off in different ways as insights practitioners, and then became, our careers advanced with these companies, and we got further and further from being practitioners and researchers and more to running the business of insights. And I think that is a part that people forget is an option and a route to, is that you've got stretching allows you to go in new directions, and it's certainly because I stretched out of research and into data and into then marketing and then to more marketing development, more brand development, more company development. Then I started working with customers. Then I started developing products. Then I started bringing things to market. Then I started running a company. It's all connected, and we're leveraging the same curiosity and the same empathetic skill sets that we have, like tendencies that we've got all the way through. There's a way to do it. You just got to find the right people and opportunities and time to make it happen.
Yeah, well, and I think there's that made me think of another sort of interesting thing. If you think about your journey from your first job in market research to CEO of something, where you end up being an administrator, right? And I think that it's also okay for people to go in the other direction, right? To realize that you don't love being an administrator and you don't love, running a company or a department. And what you actually do love is sitting there and playing with the data. And what you actually do love is, or maybe you love project management. Like, it's just because you got to a certain place doesn't mean that if you're not happy there or you're not finding the right roles there, that it's okay. And when you go back to something else that perhaps you loved more, you have a whole different way of looking at things now because of the experience you had. So I think that it's really important to remind people that you don't always have to be going like this or what someone else's version of that looks like,
I'd say a big hallelujah to that. I mean, we're incredible as an industry at taking the best people that we have, the best researchers, and saying, "Oh, you can be a manager now." Oh, did we not teach you how to be a manager? Oh, okay. It's I thoroughly endorse that.
Yeah.
And all of this, the great thing about this, and I think all of us here would say this is true, that most of the organizations in this industry that exist, as I think Karen said it earlier, are organizationally oriented. So, they're going after the research companies, they're going after the CI functions and the people that are within them. And that's great, because that's how they make their income. But I think if we can actually be that glue that is based on thinking about the individual and how we help build individuals, we can actually bring a whole bunch of good to this very, very fast changing industry.
Yeah, I love that. It's exciting. It's exciting to be in the middle of it, and it's exciting to connect people. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say also, like, the other thing that I think is really unique and I love about ICN is we are independent. We seek to have partners right across the industry. We have no reason to favor one over another. We're just looking for whatever provides value. We're looking for the value in every individual, every company, everything. What can we extrapolate from all of the wonderful resources in our industry to drive a much brighter future and a much brighter, healthier ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that's so great. And I think that it's also so important. I mean, over the past few years, there's been some wonderful initiatives that have taken place across the industry where global organizations are working together to further a cause. And I think that speaks to this, right? So it's like when we work together, when we, put our minds together to create something, we can really achieve a lot, and if what we're aiming to do is to provide more opportunities for people, more training, getting people in contact with the right people, and again, working across the different industry organizations instead of focusing on one. I think this is a wonderful time for this. And I think that this is going to go far. Okay, so Brian, you've been the engine behind ICN from day one. What was the moment where you thought, okay, this needs to be bigger, more structured, and more official?
Yeah, so, we started the ICN just as, career outlooks for many research people started feeling sour. Things started to change. As we're saying, we were just dealing with the Great Resignation and then moving on to return to office. And I think it took about a year and a half until July 23 when our members a month started going up dramatically. Our new members per month went from like 40 to 100, and it's stayed there since. So in some months it's been over 155. It's been, depending on what's been going on. You can track what's going on in the Insights labor market with our membership, and people post jobs with us. It's sometimes it's 3 months delayed after people's benefits run out. It's incredibly impressive to see it. It's also scary to see it because that means there's 100 more people who are struggling, and they're new usually. And then our meetups, our virtual meetups that we do every 2 weeks, those attendance of those shot up proportionally too. So we started getting 80 people, then 100 people, and then 150, 160 people at our virtual meetups, where we're just coming together to talk about the challenges, the issues of the day, the new, like what's going on, and the insights that's affecting our careers. Sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's economy, right?
Sure.
I continue to be impressed and humbled by the volunteers, the amount of volunteers, and the quality of the volunteers who come to us, who are ready to be a part of helping this cause, to help people, because all of us have been through some kind of career torture and have felt that self-doubt, have felt alone, and the ICN is such a special place. We know there's a place we can come share and help other people find their voice and find their value, find their way. And but we've gotten to a point that those numbers are just too big. I mean, I can't help them with meetups alone, with virtual meetups alone. We need to be doing more direct help, helping people directly, even with an army of people. That means we've got to organize that army and lead them and steer them in the right direction. And honestly, sometimes it has felt just a little too much for me. That I need to find some strong, skilled, experienced people to help me build this out. And I'm just, again, incredibly humbled by the quality of people who see this as a real challenge, as an issue, and have stepped up to help. So, I started feeling the need to make this a real nonprofit 2 years ago. Because the numbers kept popping up and the need just kept going, and I started meeting more and more people who needed more professional help, and we needed to organize to be able to give them that.
And look, just very directly, good for you for tackling that. I mean, I think a lot of us would be, or maybe it's just me, but a lot of, some of us, me included, would be daunted at the notion of taking something that was an idea through its, infancy of, corporation to that of nonprofit. So really, I just want to say very directly, good for you for taking that on and for getting it done.
Yeah, and thank you. And thank you to my colleagues, and Karen has pushed me a lot, and other people have pushed me along, encouraged us to do this, and that it's the right decision, because we can only do so much as volunteers, and under the current structure, we started feeling the stresses of being a volunteer organization without any budget. And
yeah, right. Sorry, how do we? I think everybody can look at that and go, yes.
People ask, why are you doing? Oh, well, I don't have a budget.
Herding goats.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like, it would be like herding cats without any treats,
Yeah.
Karen, so you bring a mix of industry experience, academic influence, and now you're also an award recognized, you've gotten an award recognizing you as one of the people shaping the future of researchers. So when you think about ICN 2.0, what excites you most about supporting the next generation of insights talent?
Well, okay, so we've been talking about, how the industry has naturally evolved slowly over time. In some ways, not in our best interests, right? We've kind of become stagnant. We've become less strategic. These are not new conversations.
Right.
These conversations we've been talking about for decades. And while we've entered this period of great disruption, I am actually very excited, because I think this is our best opportunity to actually make significant changes, because we're already having to transform, and the pain of staying still is greater than the pain of changing. So finally, I think we will start to see some big changes. And as we're forming ICN 2.0, we are perfectly positioned to lead the charge here, and specifically thinking about these, newer talent, younger professionals coming into the field. They aren't kind of strapped to the old ways of doing things. They're fresh, they're nimble, they're adaptable. They've grown up in the uncertainty and the chaos, right? And so they're going to be better equipped to manage some of those challenges and to come along with us for the ride when we think about what it means for the future, for our future profession, to make it stronger, to make it better. And then also drawing in, again, we're talking about that purpose. So people drawn to the profession because they love it and they want to make a difference, and not just because they sort of fell into it, which is so much
Sure.
the story of so many of our people in the past, right? So we're looking at attracting very passionate, very intelligent, adaptable, creative individuals that can help us shape the future together.
Yeah, and I think there's also an opportunity for, what we were talking about before with the people who are industry veterans who have the, the knowledge base behind why we need to do some things some ways. So I think that the combination of those two things is incredibly powerful and often overlooked from a strategic partnership perspective, right? So it's if you think about digital natives coming in with and looks for me personally, some of the most interesting conversations I have are often with people who have come into the industry and disrupted it in some way. A very good example of this that we all know, he's not new to the industry anymore, but Dave Carruthers, right? When Vox Pop Me first hit the scene, right? He was a great person to talk to because you could have conversations and he'd just ask, why do you guys do this way? Why do you guys do this? This doesn't make any sense. And, and you end up taking a look at what you're doing and saying, I don't know. Let me go and think about this a little bit more. And I think there's tons of other examples. Michael Hess with Emporia is a great example of that. And those people are willing to share their perspectives. And sometimes you do have to answer back saying, well, we have to do it this way because otherwise the data won't hold up, or we have to do it this way because it doesn't, it needs to match something we've done before. We have to do it this way. But oftentimes you can take those conversations and roll them into, looking at things and from a different angle in a more creative, solutions-oriented way.
100% agree with that. I think it's a hugely untapped resource. So much of, I think this is a kind of more older traditional view that's fading away, but the older view of, the more specialized and experienced you are, you're always going to come up with the right choice or the right solution, which is actually not true. That's not true, because the more we can gather the collective intelligence, I would call it, of every skill set, people who are familiar with the subject and people who are less familiar because they bring that challenging point of view. I completely agree. How can we harness all of that power to transform?
Yeah, and there's also the notion too that a lot of the methodologies that we were tried and true haven't evolved with the way people interact with the world anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, as we're moving forward, we need to we've gotten a lot better, but still get even better at producing methodologies that mirror the way people want to communicate and want to interact with each other and want to interact with the brands and want to interact with, providing their feedback and that kind of thing. And so I do think that, people who are raised as digital natives, don't remember the phone ringing and someone saying, may I please speak to the, female head of the household, or, so we need to be listening to those people who have grown up in a world that was different than how most of the people on this call have grown up.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the ICN celebrates that independent thought, that we try to bring those kind of things forward. And that's, again, going back to Karin was saying about loving that this is an independent organization. We want to find those and put those people up on this, to put those ideas up on stage. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know where else you're going to get it, but we need to have that discussion. Let's do it. Like we're not afraid to go anywhere.
I love that. That's great. We're not afraid to go anywhere. It's a wonderful thing to say.
I think the urgency is that we've got on the front side or on the back side, whether you're coming in and out of school, it's been a hellscape for the last few years. If you are, and on the other end, it's been a hellscape in a different way, and we're losing too many good qualified researchers to Uber Eats because there's no more options. We can't help them find another way. So I think that's on both ends. We're trying to help people all the way through. We see the urgency and the utility. We're not misfit toys. We're not. We have value.
Speak for yourself, Brian. Yeah, I think the notion of it being a grounding, a grounding organization when nothing has been normal for a very long
Yeah.
time. And just as soon as you think that you're acclimating to what a new normal is, I don't even think we say new normal anymore, because that just goes right out the window. So I think that having an organization that is centered on, again, on solutions, on upskilling, on change, right, that can help take something that feels very intense and overwhelming and huge, and turning it into something that is accessible, palatable, and action oriented is what's needed. I mean, how do you create normalcy and grow normalcy when things feel like it's, the Wild West every single day? And I think that keeping that solutions oriented mindset when everything just feels like it's on fire all the time. I mean, if you think about, again, the difference between young people now and when we were growing up, it did not feel the way that it is, with the constant onslaught of information and change and scary stuff from every direction all the time. So I think that makes the mission of ICN even more important, because it gives people a place to go where they can connect and grow themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So Simon, you've witnessed every version of this industry. So have I. I don't want to say that in a way that doesn't acknowledge it. Many people on this call have also seen it. You've seen the good, the bad, the chaotic, the brilliant. In your mind, where does ICN sit in the bigger picture of associations, professional networks, and talent development? And what gap do you see it filling?
I really think it is the gap of helping individuals understand that they are their own agents in actually moving forward. That this is that the industry is changing. It is coming together with many other different industries' capabilities. There's new technology, and we can. You can be like Karen and say, "I'm really excited," or you can say, "I'm terrified." Either which way, I think there needs to be a resource that can enable that to happen, and also enable through the partnerships with the Insight Association, MRAS, SMR, but outside of that as well. Let's go and talk to the Gartners, or talk to the people who really have these huge data conferences, or I don't know. There's so many potential places where we could be reaching out, and where we could be bringing in resources for the people that we're actually serving. And so I think this is a different type of organization. We've not really seen one like this. We've seen a few things like this before, but much smaller. And so it's a new concept.
I love it. Okay, Jamie. So you're joining at a pivotal moment in ICN's evolution. What enticed you to get involved at this critical point in the organization's journey? And looking ahead, where do you see ICN making the biggest impact as a nonprofit?
Well, a couple of things we've talked about and stuff like that. One of the inherent things that we as researchers is we're curious. We're always asking the whys. We're always trying to find out the new stuff. And this is a part of that evolution, like Simon was talking about, is that, we need to go forward, and we need to change ourselves, and we need to reach out to those other organizations or those other companies and look for those opportunities where research just is worded differently and talked about differently and stuff like that. And that's where we come. I love the process of creating new and creating streamlined things. Bureaucracy and being transparent about everything as possible that we can is what I enjoy. And and one of the hard things that I enjoy on doing is breaking things. Because once I break something, then I know where the end is, or where it's broken, and we can manipulate ourselves to work in a more positive way.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I do think that specifically Insight's roles, and we talked about this at the very beginning of this call, where do you go that is truly a centralized place that doesn't rely solely on the job poster to put it there, right? So I think that this in and of itself, that just being one of the many things that you guys are aiming to do, but I think that really is just, in and of itself inherently very valuable. Okay, so we'd be remiss if we didn't dive a little bit deeper into AI. So AI is reshaping every workflow we've used for years. Where should professionals be investing their time and energy to stay relevant? And Simon, as an industry vet and a methodologist, I really wanted to ping you with this one first.
Get the oldest guy in the room to talk about AI. Thanks
That's
a
not
lot.
what I said. But it maybe was what I meant.
It's fascinating, really, because there's the development of this technology. I think is remarkable. I think what I just going back to what we were saying about reaching out to other forms of curiosity. I sit on the board of a major Indian data analytics company, and they look at the whole area of data in a very different way than researchers do. And Karen's heard me say this before, so she's going to look bored for a while. But it's basically that they say, what is the function of data? The function of data has always been operational, and it's always been a sort of a function of being a repository.
Right.
Then it became a way to insight. The analysis of data. Now it's really all about activation. It is the data actually activating, and it's become a loop whereby it's constantly feeding itself in terms of, okay, what can I learn now, and how do we act on that? How do the agentic a piece of AI here, act on it? And what they're saying is, that's going to be about 25% of everything we do with data is going to be at that end. So what I would say, is think about it in that way, and then think about what value you add over and above that, how you take what that is doing and say, okay, what does this mean? The human remains at the top of the peak. Yeah. But now it's all about what's the meaning behind it, because I don't think AI is yet about meaning, no matter how much Alexa tells me she is. But it is about how we actually utilize what that does in order to be more effective, more efficient. And that, I would say to people, is where you go and you learn about agentic AI.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and I think that it's not so much now, but a year or so ago there was, which is the same thing that happened when we had the rise of DIY software, right? Where we had a lot of people who were throwing flags that it was worse. It wasn't going to be able to do what a human can do. All of the things that we sort of always hear whenever there's a big revolution of some kind within the industry. And I think that it's really important for people to stay curious about it. Remember exactly what you said, and remember that again, that it has the potential to really revolutionize the participant experience, which I think is, again, something that we don't talk about. We're sort of focusing on it from our perspective of, well, maybe it's going to take my job, or maybe it's going to not go as deep as I'm going to, as on an individual basis, or all of these different kinds of things that we could use as reasons to not embrace it. But, if you think about the merging of quant and qual, for example. You know, and if you think about the decades long conversations that we've been having about survey optimization and survey length, and you know, and now we'll have the ability to have conversations with people, and then the ability to query the data output in a way that, I mean, again, you're still asking the questions, right? You're and you shouldn't ask one question. You should be asking, you know, as many questions as you need to get the what you need done for your client, right? So I think that there's so many exciting things that are happening now and getting or about to happen. Like for me on a personal level, the notion that you could take a 45-minute survey and turn it into a conversation is really exciting to me, right? It's you know, it's really not saying that you know, people are always trying to kill the focus group, and they're always going to try to kill the survey too. And the survey and the focus group are not going anywhere, right? This is just another tool in the toolbox. But the notion that we could potentially have ways of interacting with participants that is so much more natural to how they are communicating to get deeper, better insights is really, really exciting to me.
Let me pile on that one for a second. I've heard that AI is like fire. It can cook your dinner or it can burn your house down.
Not necessarily in that order.
Yeah.
But we started, and we totally believe, I think all of us on the team here totally agree. We need to know AI. We need to make it part of we need to become part cyborg. Because it's so powerful. We can do so much with it. We recently fielded a study earlier this year using an AI moderator. First time for any of us doing it. But we didn't just do it on some regular study, you know, talking about your coffee satisfaction. We were talking about sensitive issues, right? So it made perfect sense to use an AI moderator in this situation to reduce like social desirability bias, the chance that you're going to change how you're going to respond to the question because there's somebody else on the other end of the screen or a group of people in the room. Totally changes your relationship with the interview. It does become a conversation. We got 30-minute conversations out of these people talking to bots, well-trained bots who knew the context. We had trained them on the context. There are beautiful things about AI, and we need to learn to adopt it and use it, but also how to protect everybody from how it's being used. And that's where we lie. I think it's amazing what you can do. If I was a subject matter expert on inside researcher, I'd be, you know, I'd love to have access to these tools. Too bad a lot of them don't. Because just being able to leverage the work that you've done recently in the last year or so would be amazing.
To create an interactive portfolio. You know, there's and I think that we're starting to see, which this is something that I thought was great on this last year's conference circuit, was you were starting to see real examples of how companies were using it, as opposed to just these theoretical, either you know, super gung-ho or panic stricken, you know, presentations. And because I do think that, you know, every organization is going to have to make decisions for themselves about it. And that can be from automating back-end workflow to, you know, data manipulation to moderation to, I mean, there's so many different applications. And I think that there's not, you know, for people who are starting to look for work and are starting to have these conversations about what your experience is like with it, you know, in order to secure some of these roles, because that conversation is happening in every job interview you're going to have. You know, what is your experience? I think that it's the curiosity that is most important about it. As well as some practical applications that don't necessarily even have to be work related at this point. They could be theoretical. They could be things you've played around with that you're, you know, on your own. But I don't think that we should be, you know, I mean, it's such a big conversation to have, because it's not just about one way of thinking about it. It's not, you know, there's so many different applications that you can free up yourself and your team to do that more strategic consulting by implementing it in 100 different ways, right? And it doesn't have, it can be this much of the process or this much of the process, and it doesn't have to be in one place. So
one last thing I would add to that is to agree with everything everyone said, but then also not to lose sight of what makes us human. So while we're finding the appropriate use cases for AI, which is exactly what we need to be doing, not throwing it at everything, we also need to be distinguishing between, well, this is where I add value. This is where I can hold my human skill set. I could be more persuasive, more use critical thinking, use synthesis, that consulting piece, right? So how can we bring those things together to activate and make sense of the data in a way that AI just won't ever be able to do?
I love the word activation. I think that that's really a great one to use. And again, I do think that it's, we should be thinking about it as an assistant, not a primary. And I think that if we, whatever that assistant looks like for individuals, because I do think there's, we've already seen this a lot, right? Where reports are making it out there that have obviously been produced by AI without human oversight. And, so I think hopefully we'll see less of that as people are using it the right way and in a way that has integrity for both their clients, the participants, the partners, etc. All right. Anyone have anything else they'd like to share or say before we wrap up? No?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again, Carrie, for scheduling this and making sure this happens, because I'm really excited about the team that we've pulled together, and that we're probably going to have 7 new faces in our governing and operations board this year. So we're going to shift things to be more proactive and more responsive at the same time. But we're going to be putting a lot into building partnerships and those educational partnerships, those industry partnerships all over the globe. And so that we can do more and help more people, because we know there's work to be done there. If we do fast forward a couple of years and try to look for success, it's that we're having a direct impact on more people, and helping them to find more ways. It's not just about getting a job. A lot of it is about finding your way through just that moment that you're in. So we're going to be more effective at doing that, and it's just more efficient.
So what do you hope people say about the organization and its impact 2 years from now, let's say?
We already, every day I hear people come up to me, they tell me that, hey, I was in a hole and you got me out, that you gave me hope just from posting jobs, or just from giving some place to go to talk about some of these things. That's going to continue. I know that, because and that comes through the community. It doesn't happen because we're setting these things up. It's because people are showing up, and they're showing up to help other people. And they're going, yeah, I realize that people are hurting, and that it's taking longer to get jobs, and that they need more direct assistance. So that's going to continue. I hope that they're seeing us as a curator of the future of opportunities, that we're not sitting here complaining about how bad things are and how for humans. That's not what we're intending to be. We're trying to
the core mission.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
I think you said the word lighthouse earlier, Brian, and Jamie, I think you mentioned that to me, and I completely agree. We're the lighthouse. We're the objective as we can be, the objective view on the industry, where it's going, and pulling together and connecting the whole industry, and hopefully serving as an inspiration for what we can actually achieve when we do collaborate and extend that community feeling to the wider industry.
Yeah, I hope that I hear somebody say in 2 years' time, I would never have known where to go or what to do to get this job without ICN.
I absolutely love that. Well, I'm looking forward to watching you guys grow, all the things that you are going to do, supporting where I can. You've accomplished so much in a short period of time, and somehow it still feels like you're at the beginning, because you're at a brand new beginning, right? And the nonprofit chapter opens the doors to greater structure, broader reach, more resources, and more ways to support people. So I'm excited for where this is headed. I would encourage anyone that wants to get in touch with you to do it. I found, I've done that, and you guys have been so incredibly responsive and just wonderful to work with. So kudos, guys. Congratulations, and let's get moving.